Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. I am so pleased to have with me Marcie Nettles. She is the wife of the amazing Dr. Dondi Nettles, mother of four in their blended family, grandmother to three amazing grandkids, and chaplain to the Business Mountain. Her career of choice was in law enforcement, where she experienced time on patrol as a public information representative to the media, background investigation of all new hires. Boy, I bet that was interesting. Physical fitness trainer, detective, and sergeant. And you spent almost 10 full years as a police officer. Marcie's life suddenly pivoted in 2009 after an on-duty car accident ended her career. Presently, Marcie, alongside with her husband, they lead an international business where they focus on helping people see the vision God has for their lives and help them to achieve their true potential physically and financially. Marcie is the host of Your Blank Now What podcast, where she spotlights true breakthroughs. Where she spotlights true breakdowns to breakthrough stories. If they can, you can, so can you. Marcie has had the opportunities to choose breakdown or breakthroughs at many points in her life. And she's here to share all of that with us openly and honestly. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so inspired by you, and I was honored to be a guest on your podcast not long ago. So I'm going to turn things over to you and tell us about your journey.
Oh, I would absolutely love to. Thank you so much, Teresa, for having me here with you. And by the way, the podcast is Your Blank What Now? And Teresa's episode is Your Powerful What Now? And if you've been following her for any amount of time, you know that that is absolutely a true title for her and the way she's turned her life around from her breakdown into her major breakthrough. So, I am all about the breakdown to breakthrough story. So I really want to start by sharing my biggest breakdown with each and every one of you, because I know every single one of us has gone through something difficult in our lives. And I truly believe that by sharing our stories, we can help other people get through theirs. So my greatest breakdown was when I actually tried to kill myself 4 times. You're like, oh my gosh, you're talking about this? Yeah, guys, I got to tell you, it's been voodoo for a really long time for people to be able to talk about having difficulties and thinking about hurting themselves or trying to commit suicide, right? And what I've found is that in the beginning, it was very difficult for me because I had those same fears that most of you probably have, of being judged and people looking at me and thinking I was less than because of a circumstance or a time in my life, right? But looking back, I absolutely know that those suicide attempts, it's not who I am. It was the total circumstances of the situations that I was in that just really compounded and fell on me heavy all at once. So as Teresa mentioned, I was in law enforcement. I was there for almost 10 years. I absolutely loved it. And being able to work in all of the different areas and the different fields, I got to see the community sometimes at their best, but then also at their worst. And I really felt like I was able to add value and to be able to help others in their greatest time of need. On top of that, it was fun. And I made great money. I was able to support my kids that were only 6 and 9 years old when I first got started in law enforcement. And I really did feel like I was contributing to the community in a way that in another role, I may not have been able to do the same good, right? But the thing is that there are so many people out there right now that have that same passion, have loved the things that they've been doing and really felt like it was their life purpose and passion, all to have it go up in smoke for one reason or another. And for me, that happened hard in August of 2009 when I was in a car accident on duty that ended my career. It left me with a brain injury. It left me with several herniated discs throughout my spine that required spine surgeries. And along with surgeries, Along with that brain injury came a lot of prescription medication. So I had prescription medication for the pain. I had prescription medication for the inflammation. I had prescription medication for sleep because I couldn't sleep. And then I had prescription medication to offset the side effects of the prescription medication that I was on. And so there was so much going on inside of my body. I mean, there's so much damage and then so many things being put on top of it, trying to give me the opportunity to live a life. But the thing is that when you have a brain injury and then you add in medication on top of it, first of all, your brain's not wiring or communicating properly anyway. And so your reality is not the same as the people that are around you. So at that time, I was actually in a marriage that was already struggling. Now we're going through some financial stress on top of that. And then my mind, me having a different reality from my family, created all kinds of havoc that led to a divorce. And then it also led to us losing a house. And guys, I got to tell you, all of that was bad enough, right? But on top of it, that 6 and 9-year-old that I had mentioned before were now teenagers. And those teenagers had a mother that was there, but she was never available. And right now I can look back on those times, and I would say that that's probably the one thing that I regret about that time period of my life, is not being able to be fully present there for my kids. And another thing, I was also trying to be the caregiver or helping my elderly father that had onset of dementia. And we had a really interesting relationship, guide. From the time I was young, my father and I didn't get along. We did not have a good relationship. I was not one of his favorites. I'm the 8th of 10 kids. And so I didn't really feel seen by him anyway. But at a young age, my parents divorced. And I reminded my father a lot of my mother.
Oh boy.
And so a lot of those emotions and those feelings would be directed at me. And that was hard, right? And I had all of that on top of what I was going through. Well, that is really when I started having my suicide attempts. And I have to tell you that I was determined. I was committed. I knew what I was doing. I mean, I had done all these investigations. I knew what would be successful and what wouldn't. And I truly know that the only reason why I wasn't successful back then is because God wasn't done with me yet, and that my purpose had just not been revealed, that I didn't know what it was. I just couldn't see past this point in my life that was such a darkness, right? I was in a darkness. And so I had some really great people around me. I had some great friends. I had one dear friend that had come to visit, and she had observed how my father was treating me. She saw how my countenance was and knew it was not good. And then she was there the day after I had tried to kill myself one of the times. And she was bold enough that she took the time to make a phone call to one of my older brothers, who came down immediately, took my father off my hands, moved him to another state for his care, and just kind of took some of that burden off of me. And I got to tell you, that was the first step of me being able to breathe. Me being able to, okay, maybe I can handle some of this. And then shortly after that, I had a couple of dear friends that came to me and wanted to introduce me to an opportunity they had seen that had products they thought would help me. And, they had been there for me through a lot of things, but I have to tell you, they didn't know that I had tried to kill myself. And yet they had still reached out to me because they knew I had a need. And I truly believe that we are guided and directed. And when we think of people at odd times, sometimes it means that that's exactly the time that you need to reach out to them, because they might be in this really dark spot. And that's what they did for me. And so I went with them because something inside of me was stirring up. It's like, if you don't change something, nothing's going to change. And you know what's going to happen next. 4 suicide attempts would turn into 5 suicide attempts. And eventually, I probably would have been successful. And thank God I wasn't. Thank God I was not. But through this, I went and I saw the information, and I saw how new technology, we always have new technology coming out, new inventions, new science is happening, and some of it's really good. And when I saw it, I thought maybe this is something that could help me with my mind and with my body. And if it did, then I would be happy to share it with other people, and maybe make a little bit of money. And so I started on product and immediately had a miraculous result for me. And it's exactly what I needed, because I needed to see light at the end of the tunnel.
So
And this
just
offer, yeah, go ahead.
well, so just backing up a little bit, you made a conscious decision to come off the pharmaceuticals. Is that correct?
Okay, so that was part of my miraculous journey, is that I was able to start noticing a difference in the craziness inside my brain. It started to calm down. And I decided that I didn't want to be on those sleep meds. If I could sleep without the sleep meds, I wanted
Mhm.
to. And so I was able to actually do that within the first week. And then I noticed a difference in the way that my body was feeling. In certain levels of functionality. And so I decided that I was going to start seeing if I could reduce the amount of pain medications that I was on. And I was truly able to get off of the pain medication within 5 weeks' time. These are
Wow.
pain meds my doctor said I'd be on for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's incredible, and I applaud that because, as you know, my journey was also filled with a pharmaceutical cocktail that
Yes.
wasn't leading me in the right direction. It must have been incredibly challenging for your children. I'm sure, we can feel energy. Even science tells us now that everything is energy and it cannot be created or destroyed, only changed. So I'm sure, I don't know how much your children knew about your suicide attempts, but I'm sure they could feel that the energy in the household was not good. And that must have been very challenging for everyone. It
Yeah, it
breaks my
really
heart.
was. It
It
really
breaks
was.
my
And they
heart.
actually, I think that they chose to spend more time outside the home, which led to, choices that they made that also led them on a new journey, which is
Yeah.
so unfortunate, but it is part of the aftermath or the wake. Right. And I mean, because I didn't even mention that, I went to my doctor with the deep depression and I ended up with more prescription medication.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
this prescription medication for antidepressants, anxiety medication, and I want to tell you right now, if you are out there and you are on these medications, there are times that they are absolutely necessary. So I do not want you to think that that there's something wrong with you taking them. It just was not. It wasn't quite appropriate for myself at the time. And I noticed on the bottle itself that it said may cause suicidal tendencies as a warning label. And now looking back on that, and I'm like, that does not even make sense to me. Does that make sense to you, Teresa? I mean, that you would give someone that has severe depression a medication that says may cause suicidal tendencies.
Yeah,
It
it
doesn't
doesn't
make sense.
make yeah, it doesn't make sense to me, and I get it because when I decided like you that something needed to change and I was going to come off of my pharmaceuticals, and anyone who is listening that may think about doing that, please educate yourself. Don't just come off your meds. It's not a good idea. But I know I began to do my research, and all drugs have side effects, and that's something that we need to be aware of. Some drugs, the side effects are more severe than others. And and sometimes pharmaceuticals are necessary. Just today, I was speaking with a client, and they can help us in what I call leveling the playing field. So, if you are in severe chronic pain, sometimes if you take a painkiller, it just is enough. Sometimes you just need one because it's just a matter of getting over that hump so that you can level the playing field.
Yeah.
I personally know how debilitating chronic pain is. You can't even think when you're in chronic pain. But enough about that. So, but your journey goes back even further. The car accident was like your wake up call. The car accident, and then the injuries and the surgeries and the medications. But there's more to your story. Would you like to share that with us?
Oh my gosh, there is so much to my story. I mean, this was just kind of the culmination. This was the wake up call. This was you better do something now or your life is never going to change or it's just going to end, right? And that's the thing is that when I started thinking, and by the way, guys, just so that you know, before I got to the point of being able to recognize my childhood trauma and to be able to see what part it played in where I was at in that depth of my despair, I had to go through a lot of personal growth. I had to learn that I had to think differently. I had to see that there was a different world out there than just what I was telling myself inside of my head. And once I saw that, okay, I could grow my boundaries, meaning I could expand myself. And if you learn and grow, you get bigger, which means your outside boundaries is bigger too, which means there's more ignorance for you to tackle, right? For you to take into your growth process. And so as I've been doing all this personal growth, I started dissecting some of the things that I have been through. And what kind of led to it was I was going through a lot of grief. You know, I had some circumstances with an adult child that she had separated herself from me because of who I had not been back then, but also in my mind, who I was now and the way that I was working with her as her mother as a adult. And so I started looking at all this, and I identified I had a lot of childhood trauma that compounded all at one time again. And I didn't have any guidance or direction from the adults in my life because they had their own trauma going on. They had their own situations going on.
Right.
So, you know, I identified about 5 specific things that really led me on this pattern of thoughts of who I was and what my value was. And so the first one is when I was 12 or 13 years of age, my parents got divorced. And so then my father was outside the home. I really wasn't being seen, and I had abandonment issues. And then on top of that, shortly, my first niece was stillborn. And yet she was absolutely a perfect baby. I saw her and I didn't understand. I was too young to understand why this baby was not alive. The third thing was I had a school bus crush, a boyfriend that I sat in the seat with as we went to school and home from school. He was a little bit older than me. We were just really good friends. But one day I got a call telling me that there had been an accident and that his twin brother had shot him with a gun they thought was empty.
Oh,
And
boy.
at that point, I remember right now at that point shutting down because I was on overload for such a young child. And at that point, I was numb, and I started acting out of numbness and doing things that were not safe or right for me, like sneaking out of my house and running across the small town I lived in to meet up with kids that were older than me that I had no business being with in the first place. And by doing that, I put myself in a position to where just probably about 13 years of age, I was raped. And it was by a peer, but an older peer. So I was 13, he was 18. And what that created was the rumor mill. Because for young girls, when this happens, it's always a negative. For the young boys, sometimes, unfortunately, it's accolades.
Right.
And that's really what kind of happened for me. And as the rumors continued on, and in this numbness that I was functioning out of, I started into this position of, why say no? I don't matter. It doesn't matter. Why say no? And that really is the basis of how I made decisions clear up until my late 20s and even my 30s, which is crazy to think of. But it's also why I had 3 divorces before I met my amazing forever husband now, which also came through that opportunity that I was introduced to, because we met there. And he is the one that truly introduced me to having a personal relationship with God and understanding that my identity didn't have anything to do with those things that had happened to me. But my identity is because I belong to him. And I started thinking of myself out of that view instead of being stuck in the stories I had been telling myself for decades.
So your journey is just amazing, and it's easy for me to relate because I also suffered childhood trauma, and it wasn't until later in life, like you, that when everything was going awry, I started putting the pieces together. And so two things. I don't know which one you would like to tackle first, but um, I know you and I discussed privately that a lot of this lack of control in your life led you into law enforcement. Should we go there first and then talk about surrender?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So Teresa, as you're talking about that, it brings to mind, it's like all of my safe places had gone away. Because at the time I was 20, I was married my first time. I was 7 months pregnant with my first child. My mom passed away from cancer.
Mm.
And so she had been that constant. She had been that person that I knew loved me unconditionally no matter what. And she would be the one that, if I ever did humble myself and ask for advice or need help, she would be the one that I went to. And so losing her, put me into this position, even though I had kind of taken the position more as a teenager that, you know what, it's up to me. I have to protect myself. If I do something, I'm going to do it because I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to let someone else just do it. But when my mom passed away, it was one of those curses we put on ourselves when we say, I will never, right? It's like, I will never do something. And yet then that becomes a binding force on us that limits us in our lives. And I really think that one of those things that I said is that I will never let someone control me. And so going into law enforcement was the perfect career because I was the one that you have this mindset. You think that you're not always in control. I mean, especially today, I pray for the brothers and sisters in law enforcement every single day for their safety and for a good judgment in decision making. But I believe that the bat belt that comes along with being a police officer, the different tools, the training, the opportunities that you have to be that person of authority fit right in line with me protecting myself and potentially being a protector of other people that could have been in the same situations as because I did see myself, I was drawn to, and I was utilized several times in investigations for child crimes and for domestic violence and for different situations like that. So yeah, control. Oh. It had been my
Yeah,
nemesis for a long time.
it makes perfect sense, that you would, because I know that there's a lot that you have to go through in order to become a police officer. And then you're wearing this uniform that is a signal of power, right? And then, of course, you've got all your equipment. I think you referred to it a minute ago as the belt.
The bat belt.
That always amazes me when I see that. And I have a huge respect for our law enforcement officers. Yeah, I feel much safer with them around.
Yes.
So, but ultimately, it didn't protect you.
No, I actually put myself into a position of being in a career and an environment that was not very friendly to women. And I will not bash anyone, but I had circumstances to where, I was, it was just not, it was not a kind, it was not a friendly environment being a female law enforcement in law enforcement as a female during that time period. This was in, right, actually, my first day was the day before 9/11.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
The whole world got turned upside down.
Oh my goodness. That's like going into healthcare a month before the pandemic. Like, you don't expect that, right?
Yeah, no, not at all.
Wow.
It was a very crazy time. So when people say everybody can remember where they were when, the planes did what they did, I was on my way to my second day of work.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so you know how I feel about surrender. Can you tell us how surrender helped us on your journey?
Oh, absolutely. So at first, okay, so there's another word that a lot of people use for surrender, and it's escaping me right now because I don't like it so much. Can you remind me of the word that I mentioned the other day that I did not like? Submit. Submit.
Yeah, I don't like that
Sub-
word. No, no,
submit makes me
totally
ill.
different.
Yeah, submit makes me ill at a cellular level. I'll tell you that. I feel it deep inside of me when I hear the word submit, and if I need to submit, because a lot of it has to do with my growing up again, and the church that I was raised in, and just so many different things, right, around the word submit. And so surrender, when somebody introduced me to the word surrender, that was amazing. Because, after I had gone through all this childhood trauma and this opportunity to feel like I had to be in control all of the time, and into my law enforcement career, and then my suicide attempts, where surrender came into it was first being willing to look at something differently. Because there's no way I would have ever considered doing what I do now before. I wouldn't have. Surrender came into play after my third divorce, and I tried dating again, and it was horrible. And I went to God and I said, you know what, God, if you ever want me to be in a relationship again, it's your turn to choose, because I realized that I can't choose for myself. I suck at it. And so I wrote out a list of things that I needed in a husband, and I wrote out a list of things that I could not tolerate in a husband. And the beautiful thing is that I never put on that list that I needed a personal chiropractor, and yet I got it. God gave me my own personal chiropractor too, which someone with my history, that is a huge benefit. But surrender has come into my life in such a huge, beautiful way, in understanding that, you know what, the things that are out of my control, I need to release. Because if I focus on the things that are out of my control, I'm going to get more things that are out of my control. But if I surrender to the process, if I trust God, and if I allow Him to work and just try to be the best person that I can possibly be, then I get more of the positive that I'm focusing on. If I focus on helping others and supporting them and serving others, the problems that I had before almost disappear. So it's really, I think that focus and surrender and all of these beautiful things that can change our lives, they all go hand in hand. But it really does start with surrendering and understanding that that control factor of my life is so yesterday. It's like, I don't need that anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I think surrender is such a misunderstood word. People assume that it means giving up, and it doesn't. Surrender does not mean giving up or giving in. Submit would mean giving in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, surrender just washed over me like a warm bath, and it
Yes.
allowed me to relax. And I often describe it as let's say you're in a huge mall and you can't find the store that you're looking for, and you come upon one of those kiosks that says you are here. It has a big red arrow that points and says you are here. That's what surrender did for me. It made me stop and recognize where I was, and when you know where you are, you can find your way out. So that's what surrender did for me. So I so appreciate you bringing surrender into our conversation today.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's a really good thing that so many different people could ponder on and just make some really small changes in surrendering, and feel, instead of feeling like they have to be in control of it, and make all the difference in their lives.
It does. It does, because when you can relax and trust is a big part of it, right? Trust in your higher power, trust in your God. When you can do that and know that things are usually working out, we just don't know it. Now, because you and I have similar stories, we both had these huge breakdowns that led us to where we are today. And we're in pretty good places today, aren't we?
We are. Yes, we are. Yes,
So,
we are.
so for anyone who's out there struggling and feeling like you just can't take anymore and you're going to break down, know that behind every breakdown, there's a big breakthrough waiting to happen. Wouldn't you
Yes.
agree?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And one thing I would love to say on that is that um, I was a really good runner. I was such a good runner. And I don't mean physically. I don't mean putting, my feet to the ground and running, because I'm really not a very good runner when it comes to that. But when things would get difficult, when things would get hard, when a marriage wasn't serving me or I thought anymore, I was a good runner. I was a good leaver. I was a good, I'm out of here girl, because I felt like if I changed my outside environment, that everything would get better. But then I had that aha, and I think this is an aha that so many people need to hear right now, is that, you really do have to look at the insides, your inside environment, because it doesn't matter what your latitude is or where you are physically right now. It's how you are inside, right? It's your attitude that matters. And so once I figured that out and I could go to work on my insides and what I thought of myself, who I believed myself to be, what I thought that my identity was and what my purpose was, and really coming to the truth of it, that's when everything changed. So no matter what circumstances people are in, it's an inside job. It's an inside job. Don't look outwards for it. Look inside.
I agree. I agree. And I've been known to be a runner as well in my past. Yeah. So for anyone who has experienced childhood trauma and that hasn't been resolved yet, um, it feels like this huge, you're living this huge facade. You've got this mask on that you're showing the world, but underneath there's this crumbling, hurt, terrified person who just needs to be understood and held and healed. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
100%. And
Yeah.
and and I think that it all starts with identifying the people that you can trust and sharing with them how you're feeling.
Yeah. So that leads me to the next point. Let's talk about the power of sharing your story.
Yeah. So for me in the past, I always had a really difficult time with counseling. Sorry, counselors out there, but every experience that I've ever had, whether it had to do with my children or marriages or me personally, it never ended up in a very positive light. And so that's the story I've created around my mind. And yet I have a different idea and thought process to healing, and that is in sharing my story. I have had so much healing in sharing what I've been through and expressing to other people and being vulnerable about it, just like how we started this today, in me sharing with how I tried to kill myself and how that's such a voodoo topic, and how when you talk about it, you're worried about somebody thinking that there's something wrong with you. It's like, well, yeah, why do you think I tried to kill myself? There's something wrong with me, right? I need some help. It's a cry out for help, right?
Yeah, it is.
It certainly is.
It is.
And the thing is, though, is that the more that I shared it, the more vulnerable I was, the stronger I felt, the more empowered I felt, and the more I felt like I was coming to grips and understanding where it came from. And on top of that, me sharing my story, I have, I can't even tell you how many people that have either called me, come up to me personally, or sent me messages over social media saying, thank you for sharing your story. Because if I had not heard your story when I heard it, I had already made plans to end my life. But because I've seen what you've been through, I've seen that you got through it, and I see that there's something on the other side of it, I'm not going to do that anymore. There is
Wow.
so much power in sharing your stories. And some of you may be thinking, well, I don't have a very big story. I will tell you, the story that you have is powerful, and that there are people out there that need to hear it. And they're probably waiting to hear it so that they can take the next right step for themselves. I would just say be bold, be true, and be confident that everything that you've been through didn't happen to you. It happened for you so that you could become who you are. so that you can be the big person, be the strength, to be the kind, loving person that you are, to be able to help somebody else on this path of life. It's a journey, and other people are just a few steps behind you. And
Yeah.
that's the importance of sharing your story.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Just make sure you share it with the right people, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning. I mean, I would say that in the beginning, you need to be really cautious on who you share with, because you want to make sure it's somebody that's going to be loving and kind and supportive. They're not going to baby you. You don't want somebody to baby you and coddle you, because that's not going to help you get out of where you're at. But you want to know that they're not going to misuse the information that you share with you
Right.
or with them. But on top of that, after you've done those first steps, starting to share your story in different places will now not only just be healing for you, but it will be the breakthrough, the first breakthrough for someone that hasn't been able to start sharing their story yet.
Yeah. That's incredible. I love that. I love that. And for anybody who does have a powerful story that they are ready to tell, how can
Yeah.
they contact you about getting on your podcast?
I love that. That's awesome. So, first of all, my podcast, Your Blank, What Now? The blank is all the descriptive about the hard times in your life. You get to title your own episode. And the thing is that if we show and share our stories, we're shining the light on the potential for someone else. I mean, think about Roger Bannister, right? Roger Bannister, before him, there was hundreds of people that tried to break that 4-minute mile, if not thousands, right? But Roger Bannister came in, and once he broke that record, now we've had thousands do it since, right? Because he showed them it could be done. And so that's the power in sharing your breakdown to breakthrough story. And so you can reach me several different ways. You can either message me on any social media outlet. You can find me at Marcie Nettles, or you can go to dondiandmarcie.com. You can see previous episodes, see if it's something that you're interested in sharing your story on, as well as there's a way that you can reach out to us there with your desire to be on the show, which I would absolutely love to highlight your story, because I know the power in the story, and I just want to empower you to share it more. So I would love to have anybody reach out that's interested.
And I will make sure that your contact information gets put in the description area of the video after it is finished recording. So people will
Wonderful.
be able, yeah, people will be able to contact you.
Thank you.
As we begin to wrap up, what would you say are the big lessons you've learned from all of this?
Personal growth is not something that is just a luxury. It's a must. Unless you want to be stuck where you are, you need to grow yourself. Where you focus, your energy goes, and where your energy grows, right? And so you want to make sure that you're focusing on the right things, because that is something that has been huge for me, because obviously through all my breakdowns, it was very easy for me to focus on the negative, which brought me more negative. But
Right.
once I was able to change my mindset and focus on the positive, then the goodness started to happen, right? I have learned that my mind and body, when activated, are my most powerful tools yet. That when we take care of ourselves in specific ways, that we will surprise ourselves in what we can do. I mean, into my 50s now, and I am excited because I feel good, I perform good. I don't want to say I look good because that's a little cocky, but I'm not
But
doing
you
too
do.
bad.
But
I'm
you
not doing
do.
too
You
bad.
don't look like a grandmother. When I was reading your bio, I wanted to stop like 6 times. 3 amazing grandkids. You certainly don't look old enough for that. So yeah, you do.
Well, and having the energy is so important, to be able to keep up with them and to play with them and to be the
Right.
energetic grandmother that I want to be. It's like, what do you have in your life that you want better when it comes to your health? Think about that, identify it, and there are ways for you to activate your body to be able to have what you want. It's that simple. You just have to make the decision, and it comes down to that. The most important thing is that you make a decision that where you are at is not where you want to stay, and that you're willing to commit and understand that you are worthy, you are valuable enough to do whatever it takes to get where you want to go. It all has to start with you making a decision, though, and just little steps, one at a time, doing the next right thing for you.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. And I agree with everything that you said. Decide that you want things to be different. Surrender so that you
Yes.
can get that little map I talked about, and everything shifts from there. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you
Beautiful.
so much for joining me today and sharing your amazing story. I just, when I found you on LinkedIn and I read one of your posts about the back injury and the car crash and the painkillers and the suicide attempts, and I was just like, I need to talk to this person.
And I'm so glad that you did. And that's the thing, guys, too, is that when you are inspired by someone, or you get this feeling that you need to reach out to someone, you need to reach out to them, because you never know exactly what will come from it. But it will never be negative. It will always be a positive, and you never know where the road's going to lead you. But it starts with a reach out. I'm so glad that you reached out to me, Teresa.
Me too. Me too. And thank you again for being so generous with your time today. I'll make sure your contact information gets put in that description box, and you and I will talk again very soon.
Yes, we will. Thank you so much, Teresa.
Bye, everybody.